Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Monday evening. And our phone number, if you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, feel free to do it, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, big headline today. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. If you haven't, good morning, because it's been all over the place. But the Supreme Court had a unanimous decision that, no, you cannot throw Trump off the ballot for the 14th Amendment, this amendment, the Third Amendment, no amendment. You can't throw him off the ballot. And it's not because he's Trump. It's just because you can't do that. Right? So we're going to get into that for most of this hour. We're going to be discussing that, and I am going to be taking your phone calls after the bottom of the hour. So I've been getting a little heat every now and again from some of the folks on social media saying, you know, you don't take enough calls. Guess what? There's not a lot of people that even call in the 10 o'clock hour. So it's here right now in New York, 10 o'clock Eastern time. You're welcome to call if you have a question for the guest. If we can squeeze it in, we will. Make sure it's a really good question. And if not, once the guest is gone, I go straight to the callers. So again, that's an opportunity for you to call in if you desire to. But I just wanted to make that point. Trump gave some reaction to his victory. We'll get into that in a little bit. Then we have, let's see, there was another story here. Oh, Texas. The big story was in Texas. So the Supreme Court and the Federal Appeals Court reviewed what had gone to the appeals court, and they've also decided that, guess what? You can, in fact, use law enforcement in Texas until they give it further review. So another big win for America, where Texas is going to continue to do what it has to do to make its state safe for its citizens. It's a shame that the President of the United States, Alejandro Mayorkas, and the secretaries of everything else, HHS, et cetera, that they're not doing everything that they can to make Americans safer, to protect our homeland, to protect our border. You know you've got an immigration problem when immigrants themselves, legal immigrants, are very unhappy with what's going on. But that's exactly what's happening right now. Lots of people are very upset with this. It doesn't matter if you are someone that has parents born in this country or parents that were born elsewhere. If you were born here or born elsewhere, if you're a legal immigrant in this country, I can almost guarantee you that these people are very upset at all of the crime that we've seen. The toddler that was shot, the teenage girl that was raped, the 22-year-old girl that was murdered. Just over the weekend, I was doing a show with Lydia Serrani on Newsmax TV, and there is the resurgence of MS-13 in Long Island. They found chopped up body parts. That's a signature calling card for MS-13. Mala Salvatrucha 13, right? That's the name of the vicious street gang from El Salvador. And you know why they're here? I mean, they've always been here. But they're here now because their president, Nayib Bukele, he's putting them all in jail. And he's taken back the jail. For years, they ran the jails. It's fascinating what happens. Now, listen, I'm not making a plead for any type of dictatorship or autocracy or anything like that. I'm not. I realize that that's not the case today in El Salvador, but I do know that they were a military junta for, 40 or 50 years? And sometimes people, the citizenry, can become attracted to the strong man who does the right thing. I think of Augusto Pinochet, right? In Pinochet was in Chile, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a fan favorite of many. They said, oh, he's a dictator. He's this and he's that. The same stuff they say about Trump. But he brought the heavy hand that was necessary to keep things in check. And that's a reality of life that we have right now, right? Everybody complained about Trump until he was gone. Now he's gone. And everybody's like, yeah, well, mostly, not everybody, but most people. They're thinking, maybe we reacted too soon. Maybe the orange guy isn't so bad. Maybe those tweets aren't so bad. Maybe the orange sneakers aren't so bad. Anyway, another story, not breaking news, but one that I just feel the need to comment on. JetBlue and Spirit have terminated their merger agreement. Now, this one, I can tell you, I recently took a trip to Puerto Rico, and I bought the ticket on JetBlue, but they gave me the return on Spirit. And I try to avoid Spirit as much as I can. I used to fly Spirit all the time, never had a complaint. When I was paying $50 a round trip or $99 a round trip from here to Miami or something like that. But now it's not the case, right? It's oftentimes, even last minute, it's only, $100 cheaper sometimes. And it really $50 cheaper. And you start to question. It's like, how much did Spirit save with buying chairs that have no cushion, right? Because you almost feel like you're on a New York City bus when you get on the Spirit airline. It's so tight in there, and those chairs are so hard. Anyway, the service is incomparable between JetBlue and Spirit, just as an aside, right? Spirit, nice people, they're fun, but they're kind of laid back, they're very casual, and you pay for everything. They're like, did you buckle your seatbelt? All right, that's going to be $64.90. Oh, did you breathe that recycled air? Okay, that's another $27.50. Right? They charge you for absolutely everything. Now, JetBlue, on the other hand, excellent service, super smooth ride, great team on the plane, and guess what? I got snacks for free. I think they even gave me a drink for free. So not like a cocktail, but like a water or a soda or something like that. So guess what? If the only outcome from this that I would have really appreciated was that Spirit was going to adopt some of those JetBlue policies. If this was a merger where they were going to go the other way and you were going to start to pay for things on JetBlue and not have a movie in that little screen that's built into the back of the seat, well, no bueno, right? And the seats are so much more comfortable on JetBlue, and I think you probably get an inch or two more legroom. So what can I say? JetBlue, flying colors in my book. Spirit, only when necessary. Anyway, we're going to continue with our discussion on things that really matter, not which airlines I like, but that was in the news, so I wanted to talk about it. I want to talk about Biden, his cognitive mental ability. I also want to talk about something we talk about here pretty often, and I think it's important, which is how we approach people that disagree with us, right? What do we do with the dissidents? And I don't take the bait on everything. I get a lot of criticism online and stuff, and sometimes I respond. Most of the times I don't. There's an old saying that says, don't feed the trolls or they'll come back for more. However, I will say, I think that this program, we do dedicate a third of the program to listener phone calls, and I always take the calls that disagree with me first. So when somebody criticizes this show and says that, we don't take enough phone calls, or B, that we don't allow people to speak their mind when they disagree with my position, oh, come on. You've got to be kidding. That's straight up trash. So I've heard that, and I just wanted to reiterate that for the audience, that if you disagree, you're welcome to call. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to continue the legal discussion on this big Trump win. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I will say that President Biden, number one, stop weaponization. Fight your fight yourself. Don't use prosecutors and judges to go after your opponent, to try and damage your opponent so you can win an election. Our country is much bigger than that.
Of course, that's the 45th president of the United States. I like to call him El Trompito Donaldus Magnus. And he was making comments outside Mar-a-Lago today. We're about to jump into a conversation with our guest. And this is an exciting, I think, time to have this conversation because, of course, we have this big news. Now, Roger Severino is with the Heritage Foundation. He was also the director of the Office of Civil Rights at HHS during the Trump administration. And I want you to hear a clip of President Trump responding to today's Supreme Court decision of 9-0, unanimous decision, saying that he cannot be kicked off of the ballot in Colorado or anywhere else, I guess, for that matter. Check this out.
I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision today. It was a very important decision. We're very well crafted, and I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together, which our country needs. And they worked long, they worked hard, and frankly, they worked very quickly on something that will be spoken about 100 years from now and 200 years from now. Extremely important. Essentially, you cannot take somebody out of a race because an opponent would like to have it that way. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's the leading candidate, whether it was the leading candidate or a candidate that was well down on the totem pole. You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well. And I really do believe that will be a unifying factor because while most states were thrilled to have me, there were some that didn't, and they didn't want that for political reasons. They didn't want that because of poll numbers, because the poll numbers are very good. We're beating President Biden in almost every poll. New York Times came out yesterday with a very big poll for us. So they didn't like that, and you can't do that. You can't do what they tried to do. And hopefully Colorado, as an example, will unify. I know there's tremendous support. They've brought our support up very strong in Colorado because people in Colorado thought that was a terrible thing that they did.
Of course, that's President Trump, Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of the United States, responding to the Supreme Court ruling of 9-0 in his favor. Big victory for Trump today at the United States Supreme Court. As I mentioned, our guest, Roger Severino, is former director of the Office of Civil Rights at the United States Department of Health and Human Services and vice president of domestic policy at the Joseph C. and Elizabeth A. Anderlich fellow, at the Heritage Foundation. Roger Severino, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I want to get into this because obviously President Trump just laid out what I believe is a political argument, commonsensical one, if that, but it is, in my opinion, a political argument. Was that the same basis, election interference, of his legal argument? Walk us through it.
Well, it was based on the Constitution. What does the Constitution provide for elections of a president and removal or disability of a federal officer? Is it the states that get to decide who qualifies for a federal election, or is it the federal government through Congress that decides? And the Supreme Court 9-0 said it is for Congress to decide who can qualify or not under the post-Civil War amendments to the Constitution. It's really about the separation of powers and federalism. Who is it that gets to decide? And very clearly, for a national election, for a president, the unified political force for the nation that the founders envisioned, you can't have an individual rogue state engage in election interference. That's the bottom line result of this holding. All the accusations of Trump engaging in election interference, well, the state of Colorado was the one trying to take away the will of the people by removing a president from the ballot. It was just so absolutely outrageous that the courts of Colorado thought they could get away with this. The Supreme Court, by a vote of 9-0, said, no way, we're not going to allow this to happen. And that's pretty rare with the very polarized Supreme Court we have now,
right?
That you'll have 9 justices come together and say, this rogue state, we cannot have this sort of chaos. And that's the word that was used in the opinion, that it would be chaos that would be unleashed if every individual state would be able, in their own judgment, with their own set of rules, and they can make up their own rules as they go along and say, well, we think you're an insurrectionist, but maybe you're not, and you are, and you're not, before any election is done, depriving Congress of the ability to have any say on who could be a federal candidate. It's just, again, this is something you would see in a third world country, but we saw it attempted to be imposed in the United States, and this is just one of many instances of lawfare because people on the left don't respect the rule of law. In this case, did not respect the Constitution, all in the name of stopping Trump from retaking the White House, given that he's in the lead in the polls.
Yeah, Roger Severino, I think you explained it beautifully, and it's while it's a great, eloquent response from you, it's also, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, man, this is alarming. And I listen to this stuff every day. But when you put it that way, it's like, man, I feel like, how have we gotten to a place? And maybe we've always been at this place. Maybe it's my own naivete or ignorance. But I thought that there was a level of decorum or collegiality amongst officers of the court, attorneys, that they wouldn't do something like this because of the bar, and they would be afraid of being disbarred or something short of the bar, like being made fun of by their friends at the bar for pulling a stunt like this. Am I naive to think that the judges and attorneys and those that brought this case and allowed it to move forward in Colorado were doing this on a long shot in good faith? Or did they know full well that this was a sham, but they just wanted to waste time?
Well, the district court was very interesting. The district court said, you know what? We're gonna declare that President Trump was an insurrectionist, okay, based on just mostly the testimony of that sham congressional hearing, right, the January 6th commission. Mm-hmm. So that's a kangaroo court. That's not a court of law.
Right. It's
right? That wasn't even. Yeah, it was Congress putting on the show, and not even Congress, just the Democrats with a couple Republicans. Right. That put on this sham kangaroo court for the cameras. And then you had a district court judge in Colorado say, I'm going to take that record that wasn't an actual trial and say, we're going to look at that and call that enough evidence for insurrection of a former president of the United States. Okay. But had at least a little bit of decency and said, but I don't think I have the power to take him off the ballot. So that was a political game of saying, I'm going to declare him an insurrectionist, get all the headlines, but I'm not going to take him off the ballot. And then the appellate courts of Colorado said, you know what? We're going to reverse you. We agree he was an insurrectionist, and we're going to take him off the ballot. And that's where the outrage came.
Roger Severino, stand by. We're going to come right back with you. Folks, we're on with Roger Severino from the Heritage Foundation, former Trump official and attorney, and we're going to continue this conversation straight ahead. Our phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. More to come straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. And we continue with Roger Severino from the Heritage Foundation. And Roger Severino, there was, I want to put a pin in the SCOTUS stuff with Trump before we move on to the Texas stuff, because I thought that was very interesting as well. But I guess the ultimate question that I have for you is, do you think this ends what we see in Maine and other jurisdictions where they're trying to do the same thing with this whole 14th Amendment? debate, does this put the kibosh on all that, or will we see more of these shenanigans?
It should. Now, it should end those particular cases. This is abundantly clear, 9-0, that states cannot go rogue to try to remove a president from the ballot. Are they going to try shenanigans? Absolutely. They're going to continue to try. They are absolutely shameless by the number of court cases they've taken. And your earlier question was, are there any consequences for these lawyers and judges? Apparently not. This is an incredible double standard. I mean, you have John Eastman, who's being hounded by the state of California, going after his bar license for giving legal advice to President Trump. Yeah. And now you have these actual election interference decisions that attempted to remove Trump off the ballot. And I don't know if there's going to be any consequences for the judges involved, but this can't go on. Again, this is not what America's about. Right. There is a notion of the rule of law, and you let the people decide. And right now, Trump is ahead in the polls, and that's why you see the incredible amount of legal attacks against him. They're trying to break the man, just mentally, legally, financially, politically. And it seems only to be increasing its popularity because American people are saying, you know what, this is not America. Let the people vote. Let's not have these court judges and prosecutors try to decide the outcome of the election.
Yeah, great point. And it's interesting. I asked that question, and it's funny you mentioned Eastman. I had him on here a while back, and I remember when I brought John Eastman on the programs before that stuff, as I remember it, and he was one of the most respected legal minds, in the country. Everybody thought he was a great guy. And then afterwards, he became some sort of pariah because the media and the Democrats decided to start trashing him. And they did the same thing with Rudy Giuliani. That was really the impetus for my question, which was, he's not allowed to practice in New York. They've totally tried to destroy him. They continually try to destroy him in Georgia and other places. And I think it's funny how they can get away with that with America's mayor. But when these prosecutors at the state level decide to go rogue, it seems like it's okay. And it's such a shame.
Well, with Fani Williams, there might be some accountability, right? Because of talk about shenanigans with her lover getting paid to be a prosecutor. Yeah, I mean, those allegations are serious. And the judge is taking it seriously. And we'll see if there's going to be at least some modicum of justice there, because that's an outrage upon an outrage. Not only is it a sham to go after him again in state court for alleged insurrection, yet now you have the prosecutor and her lover potentially getting profiting and taking these trips off the money they're making from going after the former president. It just stinks to high heaven. And hopefully there'll be some justice there. But again, look at the jurisdiction. They pick these courts in front of these judges because they know they're stacked against President Trump. We've seen this again and again. We saw it in New York and in D.C. The Florida one is probably a little better. But again, they're trying to throw everything at him and see whatever could stick. Hopefully nothing will, and the people will be able to decide on their own because, again, this is not the way we do business in America.
Amen to that. Now, Roger Severino from the Heritage Foundation, I want to switch gears and go to the Supreme Court decision to temporarily block the Texas law that allows police to arrest illegal immigrants or what they perceive to be illegal immigrants. And this is one that I think this is the only way that I think you could actually try to reverse some of the damage that has been done by the disastrous open border. And being from New York, I can tell you, I see videos all the time. My friends post stuff on social media, and I'll see 6 or 7 NYPD officers who are honestly some of the best trained and toughest cops, I'd say, in the country. And it takes 6 or 7 of them to take one guy into custody because, A, they have their hands behind their back. They can't use some of the techniques they used to use. But B, these people have zero respect for the rule of law. So when they're trained to shout commands, they don't care about your commands. These guys are throwing stuff. Their friends are throwing stuff. They're kicking cops while they're down. I mean, it's an absolute free-for-all. And I'm thinking, good luck to anybody who's going to try and do a mass deportation. You're going to need all the cops you can get. Does this stick? How temporary is it? What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, this is the ongoing back and forth of, can the states actually take a role to defend their borders when the federal government, through President Biden and Mayorkas, are absolutely abandoning their role? This is dereliction of duty. And that's why Mayorkas has been impeached. And that was a long overdue move. And he should be convicted in the Senate for abdicating his duties, right? We have an open border. The president admits that that's a policy that he wants. He thinks it's somehow more humane to allow criminals to come flooding in, and we see the horrible fruits of that policy. And if you don't allow the states who want to actually take a role, it's an impossible bind. You have to allow the states, when the federal government stops doing its duty, to be able to defend itself. This is one of those sad situations where you have human beings, you have sex trafficking, you have the fentanyl crisis, you have people dying in the desert to come over. And where is the compassion and sympathy from President Biden to stop this? Close the border for the safety of Americans and the immigrants trying to cross. But he's abdicated his duty. Now, this is the back and forth has been constant. Can Texas actually enforce immigration law? Can they put a barrier at the border on state property, right? And these sort of things. And much credit goes to Governor Abbott, who's
thinking outside the box.
Yeah, putting illegal immigrants on buses and sending them to sanctuary cities of New York and Chicago. Look, if you have these extraordinarily liberal policies, if you have open doors and you say, we'll take every illegal immigrant, just come on down. And he called their bluff. He said, oh, really? You do? Okay, here you go. And Chicago tried to ban one-way bus travel. Now, we have a thing called the Interstate Commerce Clause and the right to travel, where you can't stop the travel of people in the United States, but they tried to ban one-way buses to Chicago. Who? Because these were the illegal immigrants. Wow, that sounds kind of racist to me. Wasn't there a time when we didn't, when we thought that interstate travel was a right that you can't discriminate in? And no, they're saying, no, I'm sorry, we didn't mean it. We're a sanctuary city, but we're now closed. No, you're not. As long as the people are pouring over the border unchecked, these sanctuary cities should receive all of them and be forced to live by their own standards.
Well, we're seeing that happen in New York, and you've got Mayor Eric Adams now waving the white flag. He sounds like he's to the right of Ronald Reagan when it comes to immigration issues, calling for a revocation of sanctuary city policies and everything, and the city council's laughing at him. He's in bad shape over there because the city's in bad shape, and that's the reality. None of these places can actually withstand that type of pressure to live with that many people, with this influx of people. So it's a very challenging situation. Do you think that this is something? Like you said, it's been tenuous and there's a back and forth. Do you think ultimately there'll be a decision where they say, sure, yes, you can, or no, it's federalism and stay out of immigration business because you're a state and you've got kind of like they did with the Colorado decision? Yeah,
it's tougher to predict on this one. I think it was much easier in the 9-0 with the election interference of a state. Here, sometimes you do have an important federal interest, but under our federal system, it's joint sovereignty, right? States have a role to play, and it's hard to imagine they would not have an ability to defend their own borders, right? So I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court will allow the state of Texas to fill that gap when the federal government abdicates its responsibility. How exactly that's going to break down, we'll see. But Texas has been trying all sorts of creative ways to be able to force the issue because it has a right to defend itself. I mean, the states gave up a lot of sovereignty when they joined the Union, not everything. And what it means to be a sovereign nation means that we have borders, and that means those borders have to be enforced. And that was part of the deal when the states joined the Union, was that there would be the guarantee that there would be the protection of the national borders, and Biden has abdicated that responsibility, and it's hurting Americans. And that's what's most tragic about this. We have the fentanyl crisis, we have the cartels, we have the gangs of violence, the people dying in the deserts, all these things under Biden's watch, and people keep flooding in at unprecedented numbers. And Congress has to step in and pass H.R. 2 finally, and make that the actual law so we could actually shut down the border and restore order. And when you have liberal mayors saying enough is enough, you have a problem. And President Biden knows he has a problem, right? When liberals are abandoning him and saying, no, we have too many illegal immigrants, that's enough. No more room in the inn, right? That's what they're saying. And, it's going to be tough in this coming year. But the president apparently is okay with the situation. And he's repeatedly allowed it to happen under his watch and has stopped the states from stepping into the gap, which just shows exactly what he wants to do. He wants this chaos at the border because he's trying to stop Texas and other states from doing what they can to address this problem.
Joe El Baboso Biden is what I call him on this show, and I can tell you that he's definitely okay with a lot of bad decisions he's making. Roger Severino is from the Heritage Foundation and former official in the Trump administration. Roger Severino, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you're doing.
Sure. Follow me on Twitter, Roger Severino _ on X. I had a great debate recently with Mark Cuban on DEI, so that's a whole lot of fun. That's one of the best ways to keep track of what I've been up to.
Very cool. Folks, check him out. Give him a follow. Excellent guy. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for being with us tonight, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. All right, amigos, there's more to come straight ahead. Your phone calls and more when we return.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, we return. And I want to talk a little bit about, before we get into anything else, I want to talk about, again, this case that came out of Texas, right, and made its way to the Supreme Court. Because Texas, as you know, had passed this state law allowing local police officers to arrest suspected illegal immigrants. Now, that went to the Supreme Court in this legal showdown. Then today they said, all right, right now you can keep doing it until we could review it, et cetera, right? But very interesting, they've blocked it. So they can continue as is. And I wonder if this does, in fact, remain. Will this be the norm? I think this is the only way to move forward. Should Trump get in, I think it would require an all-of-government approach. And by all of government, I mean all, like state, local, municipal, etc. You're going to need all the help you can get in order to take control of these areas that have been overrun, right? But you do it very quickly. I don't think you need martial law. I know some people have mentioned that. The good news is when you have such a massive federal bureaucracy like we do and a very powerful central government, you don't need martial law all the time, right? Think about when Trump needed to clear out the park across the street from the White House, Lafayette Park, right? They were burning the church down, arsonists doing it in the name of social justice. And he wanted to go take a walk. And, of course, Mark Milley and others, he held the Bible upside down. He's very vicious. We didn't want to go. He's a show-off, whatever. He saved the day, right? He saved the day, and they made all sorts of allegations and charges against him then, like they do every single time. And a report came out from the Office of Inspector General saying he didn't do anything wrong. In fact, the Secret Service had cleared the place out or secured him, and then the National Park Service police did what they had to do only after several of their officers were hurt by bricks and whatever else they were throwing at those guys. I think even tear gas, right? They were throwing certain, or mace or whatever it was. So looking at all that, there's a Federal Protective Service, right? It's, cops on demand for the federal government. And I could see, this is what they use, by the way, to protect federal property during the George Floyd riots, certain federal courthouses and whatnot. I could see the Trump administration, or even the Biden administration, if he would, ponerse la pila, as they say, if he'd put his batteries in and get the job done. Using the Federal Protective Service to safeguard federal installations, in a way, offering support to the locals who are doing this same work. But I think that we could do it that way. Now, if things got really radical and you were to require the use of the military, then, of course, I think, they could use the National Guard in a military police capacity and, temporarily maybe even use the Army, waiving posse comitatus. They would have to do I would suppose they would have to declare, martial law in a certain county when they go in there. But I don't think that's going to be necessary, honestly. I think there's enough manpower to get it done if you are able to use all of the local police. Because with the local police comes the county sheriffs. And the cool thing about county sheriffs is they oftentimes, they roll solo. But when they need help, they can deputize a lot of people, which not every police department does. I think they all can do it, but they don't all do it. It's not very commonplace for a lot of places. So ultimately, we'll see if everybody ends up becoming a sheriff, or every last retired military guy gets deputized as a sheriff to help with this mass deportation. I'm curious to see how it'll go. Anyway, don't go anywhere, folks. Coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And again, big victory for Donald Trump today in the Supreme Court, where they decided unanimously. Again, you're talking about Justices Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Who's the other one? Sonia Sotomayor, agreeing with Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Kavanaugh, and the rest. I mean, they all agreed 9-0 that you can't throw Trump off the ballot. That's how egregious and crazy and what they called chaotic this decision out of Colorado was. And even though that's been resolved, there's a number of other lawfare legal challenges going on. The great one, Mark Levin, on his program on Saturday, I have a clip of it, maybe we'll play it later, but he had Stephen Calabresi, a good lawyer, on his show, making the argument that both Levin has made, as well as former Attorney General Ed Meese has made, that Jack Smith's appointment is illegal and unconstitutional because it doesn't meet the standard of the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. So we'll see how that goes. Now, with seconds to go, Joni in Pittsburgh, KDKA, go right ahead quickly.
Hello, how do you think this will affect Nikki Haley's chances and her campaign in Colorado?
I think there's nothing that Nikki Haley really can do to win the election. Trump has really essentially gotten the nomination clinched up. He's going to have the delegates necessary. She doesn't have a shot. I don't think it does anything for her, honestly, especially after losing as badly as she did in South Carolina. But tomorrow should be the big day for her to say she's out, and she's out for good, because Trump should secure everything, and it's Super Tuesday. So we'll see how that turns out tomorrow. Joni, thank you. Shout out to KDKA. Folks, coming right back. Rich Valdez, don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome. It's our Monday night program. Our phone number, if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to get into a couple of headlines here. There's a couple of headlines in addition to the biggest headline of the day that the Supreme Court weighed in their unanimous decision, 9-0, that you cannot remove a presidential candidate from the ballot. Why? I mean, in so many ways, it was so clear, so evident that if the people decided, then they should have a chance to vote on this person, right? Because there's a Constitution, and our Constitution is extraordinarily clear. You have to be a certain age, you have to be born a certain place, and that's the criteria, right? It's not whether you've met the standard of your political opponents or not, whether they choose to call you an insurrectionist, even though you've never been charged with that crime. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you could serve this country from a jail cell. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is guilty, that he should serve from a jail cell. If a Democrat were running and they were potentially, being investigated for something, I would probably be very critical of that if it wasn't the way that it was presented with Trump, where it was a very, very clear witch hunt, to say the least. Right? And it's been one since day one. Anyway, that is the big news of the day on that front. Of course, Supreme Court also putting a stay, saying we're going to hold off on any termination of Texas's law that allows police officers to round up illegal aliens and repatriate them. And so that will continue because the Supreme Court has said until we look at this further, they get to continue doing that. So that's going on there. But there's other news and very interesting stuff, if I can add to that. Listen to this. And we'll get to this a little bit more at the top of the next hour. But just to tease you a little bit. MSNBC, one of my least favorite television networks, was hit with bed bugs at their New York City headquarters. Wow. I wonder how that happened. I'm not going to say anything about illegal immigrants, but I'll just leave it there. People are having less sex. That's another headline. Ay, bendito. We'll talk about that. And Jeff Bezos has now surpassed Elon Musk as the richest guy in the world. Now, those are just some of the headlines in, popular culture and things like that we'll get into in Open Phone America. But right now, I want to talk about speech. And, I always talk about free speech. I have a tattoo on half my arm that signifies free speech, right? It's a Statue of Liberty, the American flag, a microphone, and some headphones. And I believe in liberty. I believe in free speech because we need to be able to disagree. That's the ultimate, to me, it's one of the ultimate markers of free speech is that we can say things that potentially offend other people and that they won't agree with, and we can have discourse. And earlier this year, I'm sure you remember, in a press conference, the president of the UFC, Dana White, he, I'm going to say quite famously, put a reporter in his place when they asked him about potentially censoring someone. Listen to this.
You obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, what they can say when they are up there with a UFC microphone and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there...
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying you...
A leash?
Like...
Free speech. I control what people say. Going to tell people what to believe. Going to tell people... I don't tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on, though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want, and they can believe whatever they want.
And it's so funny to hear the reporter's response. I'm guessing he might have been slightly taken aback because, he didn't expect that response. But I think the real part of it was that it was literally earth-shattering to him to think, what do you mean you don't tell people what to believe? That's what I do in my job, right? I believe that's what he believes. Many reporters believe that their job is to tell you something you don't know and to help inform you on something that you had no clue about. Whereas I see my job as I'm going to tell you what I believe about something, and I don't care if you agree with me or not. I'm just sharing my thoughts, and if you want to have a conversation, we will, and if not, vete para allá, right? Go over there. I don't care. But this is my approach. But the reality is there are a lot of dissidents in this country. And there's a brand new book out called Dissidently Speaking. Change the words, change the war. And I love the title of this book. And the reason I loved it is because this is kind of what I believe. I think if we reframed our conversations in many ways, like Dana White just did, right? He was very abrupt about it, and good for him. You'd think he's from New York the way he talks. But if you reframe things for people to create new neural pathways, if you will, then they'll start looking at things differently. It's all a matter of perspective. And Brent Hamachek, he's written this book, Dissidently Speaking, Change the Words, Change the War. He's the vice president and associate publisher for the Human Events Media Group, and he's with us now. Brent, welcome.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I feel like you probably could have written the book for me with that lead in you just gave. It was pretty darn good and really accurate, good representation of what I'm trying to do with the book. So well done. I might have to bring you on speaking tours with me.
Let's do it, brother. So let's talk about this, because again, I think it's a very valuable topic and one that's important right now. And I really love the subtitle here, right? Change the words, change the war. So let's dig into A, why you wrote the book, and then B, why you gave it that title.
So the reason I wrote the book is that over a long period of time, I've been collecting thoughts, writing essays, encountering people all around the country. In other words, I've been present, and I've been thinking, and I've been engaging. And what I've come to learn is that our problem isn't so much about having free speech in this country. It's about what we do with it. And we're extraordinarily sloppy. We've become derelict in our duties to think critically and to think skeptically. And we've gotten so sloppy, so aggressive with our language with others that we've got ourselves to the point in this country where essentially we become addicted to confrontation. And you mentioned neuropathing. Again, you could have written the book for me. I talk about that in one of the chapters. And so everybody in the country seems to be saying, look, what's going on right now isn't sustainable, right? That's the big word of the day. I agree. So what I've done is I've put together a collection of what I would call sort of, I'm chuckling, my version of a greatest hits. Right. But I've updated and reshaped and put pieces together, all of which are designed to do one very simple thing, and that is to flip two words in the English language. I want the people that read this book, when they put it down, to stop using the declarative and saying it is, and I want them to turn it into the interrogative and start asking, is it? And if we can do that, we can change the world, because we don't have enough people asking, is it, anymore. I think the pandemic taught us that, by the way, in spades. But we got plenty of people running around saying it is. And what they're saying it is, they're saying in a pretty sloppy, pretty aggressive way.
Folks, we are discussing Dissidently Speaking, Change the Words, Change the War. It's a brand new book by Brent Hamachek. I definitely recommend getting 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. When we come back, I want to continue the discussion on why he chose this as the title and getting more into what he describes as this the change from it is, the declarative, to the interrogatory, is it? And I think this is actually very brilliant, and it's very simple, and it's very bite-sized, and it's something a lot of us can do to, especially in an election year, to try and enhance the conversation as opposed to, I guess, putting a damper on the conversation. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with Brent Hamachek. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The great Ronald Reagan, who El Rushbo dubbed as the great communicator, and of course he called him Ronaldus Magnus, he had a quote, and the quote goes as follows. He said, "It helped me stop being a liberal Democrat. It's must reading for conservatives who want to know what's really going on in Washington, D.C." And that's a quote from Ronald Reagan about human events. And we have the associate publisher of Human Events with us right now. He's written this book. It's called Dissidently Speaking, Change the Words, Change the War. Brent Hamachek is the author. And Brent, I want you to tell us what you discuss in the book. You talk about personal communication and ethics. Tell us more.
Sure. First of all, I want to answer the question you asked before the break. Why the title? And the reason I want to answer the question is because I don't get credit for it. But the Change the Words, Change the War subtitle for this book actually came from my partner in our college program and my dear friend Felissa Blazek, who thought that the essence of this book was all about the fact that we're at war with one another as a people in this country. And if we can start to use different language, then we can start to have some sort of positive turn in that war, perhaps even bring it to an end eventually. Hopeful thought. In terms of
wishful thinking.
Right, exactly. By the way, for your audience, if they visit the book website, dissidently.speaking.com, and see the cover of the book, she also designed that. I keep saying the book will sell 1 million copies, but nobody will read it. They'll just put it on their coffee table so people can see it. The contents of the book are designed to get people to check their premises on a number of things that they take for granted routinely. And I want them to take a look at the relationships they see within society. I want them to take a look at the relationships they see between themselves and their coworkers, their family, and their friends. And I want them to take a look at the relationship they have with themselves. And if this starts to sound like an Oprah self-help book, it isn't. It's taking real stuff that we're actually dealing with every day when we're looking at the political divisions in this country, when we're wondering why personal communications are breaking down so quickly that we're involved in. When we look at ourselves, and, you know, it's sort of a Springsteen lyric, which I have scattered in every chapter of the book. I've got a little hat tip to the boss. But when we look in the mirror, do we see the man that we wanted to be? And we got to start to take a look at our own ethical structures. And this is a book for somebody who is extraordinarily confident. Because if you're really confident, you're going to say, I want to read this book because you're going to challenge me and I'm up to it. If you're not confident, maybe set it aside, because this is going to challenge things that you take for granted, where you think, I've got that covered. I know all about this. It's going to challenge those things. And so I really encourage people to feel confident, pick it up, be challenged, disagree with me all you'd like, because mostly all I do in the book is ask questions like, is it? And I want people to start asking that more themselves.
Outstanding. I think that's really important. Brent Hamachek is the author of Dissidently Speaking, Change the Words, Change the War. He's also the associate publisher for Human Events Media Group. And Brent, when people pick up the book, what's your number one personal goal that they'll walk away with? You know, the big gotcha for them. What's your hope?
Well, my big hope, my big gotcha really is that they flip those two words. And what does that mean in reality? In terms of sort of operationally. So if you stop saying it is and you start asking, is it, what does that mean that you do? Well, it means when you're sitting in front of your television and you're watching a news story and you're hearing how it's presented, that you start to take a look deeper at that and say, what's really going on? When you hear somebody use the term, somebody's far right or far left, I want you to think, does that term actually really mean anything? My favorite chapter in the book is the one about the team right, team left structure in this country. I tear apart the whole right-wing, left-wing notion. There's no such thing. And I think I proved that in the book pretty effectively. And so I want people to look at that differently. When they're sitting around their family table at Thanksgiving and a fight's about to start over some ridiculous political issue, I want them to say, all right, let's stop for a second. What's going on here? I've read about this. I understand the dynamic. I'm going to fix this. I want them to start to intervene in their own lives. We all need an intervention at this point, not from other people. We need an intervention from ourselves. And all we can do to make that happen is to get people to think critically and then skeptically, always remembering that skepticism without critical thinking is nothing more than cynicism. We've got lots of cynics in the country. We need more skeptics.
Amen to that. Brent Hamachek, again, author of Dissidently Speaking, Change the Words, Change the War. Now, Brent, in the minute or minute and a half that we have remaining, I'd love to get your take on just what you maybe just to develop that a little more, what you just talked about, when families are around the dinner table and it's the holidays and they're staring at each other and, half of them are afraid to say something. The other half can't wait to say something to tick off the other side because they're hoping that, good, I'll get rid of them for once and for all. I've been in both scenarios. Whenever people invite me somewhere, they think that like I'm a walking talk show host. And honestly, I do this here. I don't do this everywhere else. I could care less for a political conversation outside of work. But it's the perception. And people are always trying to goad me into something. I'm sure the same happens to you. But what do you recommend to those folks? What's your best nugget of advice?
You got it. Here's a back of the napkin tip. And by the way, there's a whole chapter in the book devoted to exactly what you're talking about. Couple of things, and this comes right from our Common Ground Campus program that Fliss and I created. The first one is don't ever say to anybody, you're wrong. Don't do it. Wipe those two words out of your vocabulary. The minute you say those two words to anyone, the conversation's over. You've kicked in their fight or flight response, and you'll no longer have a chance. The other thing is think about how you choose your words. Here's a tip I give to the college kids.
Right.
Don't say to somebody, I disagree with you. Say to them, I see that differently. Let that sink in, that nuance I just gave you. That is the difference between having somebody get defensive versus having somebody lean in to listen, because now they want to hear how differently you see it.
Wow. That's excellent advice. Brent Hamachek, author of Dissidently Speaking. Check out the website, dissidently.speaking.com for the book. Get a couple of copies. Brent, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for staying up late and having this talk with us.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, folks, we continue the conversation straight ahead. Don't go anyway. There's more to come.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
It's also the totality and what no one's asking you to take a cognitive test. You're writing books, you're giving interviews, you can run circles. You can run circles around anybody. Do you think it's a mistake for the president?
What day is it today, Senator Sanders?
Do you think President Biden, this came up just yesterday, should take a cognitive test to put to bed all this?
Look, once you're into that business, we need all of these criteria because before you can run for president, today it's age, and tomorrow it's this, and tomorrow it's that. This is what a democracy is.
It's always something. It's always something.
That's right. If you don't like them, don't vote for them for whatever reason. But I don't think you should have that criteria.
So Senator Bernard Sanders, he says no cognitive tests for Joe Biden, Joe El Baboso. But I say yes, absolutely. We need well, maybe not absolutely. Honestly, I'm kind of up in the air. I think for Biden particularly, I'd love to see one, absolutely. But I don't know that we should require one like statutorily. That's a whole different political debate. But I do want to bring your attention to the New York Times, which conducted a poll this weekend, and 73% of respondents from the 2020 election, that's a majority of Biden's 2020 voters, They now say he's too old to be effective. This is a New York Times Siena College poll revealing how much even his own supporters worry about his age. And, of course, Karine Jean-Pierre and others come to the rescue. But I want to get into this with from the scientific perspective, right? And I want to bring in, he's obviously an expert on mental health, Dr. Vince Callahan. He's the founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, FIND-FL.com is the website. You should check them out or check him out at drvincecallahan.com. Dr. Vince, welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me. I love being on your show.
Thank you, sir. I love having you on. You're always a wealth of information. And, I have a saying that nobody hears me say because I always say it off the air, but I always tell my my producers in the control room, it's nothing like having an expert on, right? Because the experts, whether you don't need to coach them ahead of time and say, look, I'm going to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. They know their stuff. And when you know your stuff, you know your stuff. And you're one of those folks that always knows their stuff. So I thank you for that. Now, Dr. Vince, there's this poll, and you're not a political guy, right? I know that you're not a political guy. You are a psychologist. But
I'm objective.
Yeah, amen to that. And I think the important thing here is we're talking about the mental health aspect of this. And people are concerned, not people, me, talk radio people who voted for Biden in 2020. 73% of them are saying they're not interested in seeing him become president again. Or in their words, they're concerned that his age has intensified, becoming a threat to his own re-election. And this is his cognitive ability. Now, everybody's under the sun, like Bernie Sanders, as you just heard, and in the White House, they're saying, no, he's great. He runs circles around everybody. He's fantastic. I'm not asking you to diagnose Joe Biden, but I think I'd like to hear from you, A, your general thought on this, objectively speaking, and then B, I'm not you, right? I'm not a PhD. I'm not any of those things, but I did take care of my dad who had a traumatic brain injury, and I saw the degenerative decline of what they called TBI-related dementia, and I saw so many of the mannerisms in my dad's physicality, the shuffling, aphasia when he spoke, so many things that I see Joe Biden do. And it's so alarming to me on two fronts. One, it's like I laugh politically. I'm going, oh, my God, this is crazy. And then the other side of me is like, oh, my God, this is so mean. Like, how do you let this man not enjoy his golden years and keep him in the White House? I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted there. But what say you?
What say me? Well, first of all, a psychiatrist friend told me one time how to differentiate between Alzheimer's and dementia. The Alzheimer's patient will turn on the stove and 3 or 4 hours later not remember that they turned on the stove or how it got turned on. The dementia patient won't know how to turn on the stove. One is a memory issue and one is a cognition issue. What we see in our president, unfortunately, and I'm not speaking ill of him, but what we see is the lack of ability to put words together to make a sentence. We see him shuffling. We see him falling. He's getting feeble. We see lots of different cognitive impairments that make you go, okay, what's going on here? And we know that there are people around him that make sure he does everything he's supposed to do. I get that. But at the same time, he's cognitively in decline, and you can see that. And I don't know if it's an age thing. You know, if I'm a guessing man just for a second, it's age-related dementia. But if he were 46 and had the same issues, we would say he couldn't be president because there's cognitive issues here. I mean, he's got a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. The nuclear football is the biggest one, of course. So, I mean, here you are looking at some of these things, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out our president's in trouble. So whether he's 80 or 40, these issues are cognitive issues as compared to former President Trump. He's up in age as well, but his is more behavioral stuff than it is cognition. You know, he's got a little bit of narcissism going on, and he puts his foot in his mouth sometimes and does things like that. But his cognition is very strong, and that's the real difference.
Folks, we're on with Dr. Vince Callahan from the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery. And Dr. Vince, interesting determination information that you just shared with us with respect to that stuff. Now, follow up to what we see with Joe Biden for the sake of fairness. I know he's had two open brain open cranial type of surgeries for aneurysms. Right. And I know that can cause a degree of damage just from the actual operations. Do you think that plays a part in this? Is it a big part, if any?
I believe it does, and I know that he's fallen. I don't know all the times that he's fallen, but I know we've seen on the news where he fell up the steps going to Air Force One, and we've seen him fall off his bicycle, and we've seen him fall several times. And any of those times, we don't know necessarily that he hit his head, but those are a sign of him getting more and more feeble, which is not good necessarily for what he's called to do. So, yeah, I do think that's a part of it, and I think his past history has to be a part of what you look at now. I don't know why they didn't do a cognitive test. That seems very odd to me, unless if I'm going to be a conspiracy theorist for a second, I'm going to say, well, why not? Why don't you want that test to be done? I mean, what are we afraid of seeing?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing because I think that Trump had, I don't know if he had to, but he did take a test on cognition, and the White House physician released the results saying, he passed with flying colors and whatnot. And I think Americans would be satisfied with that. But I also understand, I have a little bit of my own narcissism and inflexibility. If I were president and they told me to take a test, I'd tell them to go pound salt, right? That's just what I would do because you're asking. And I'd probably say the same as KJP going, I pass my test every day just by being here. Folks, we're on with Dr. Vince Callahan. He is a psychologist and the founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery. We come back to discuss the state of affairs in Biden's head. Will mental health permanently impair him this November? I don't know, but it does seem like it's of concern, mainly to Democrats. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. And we continue our discussion on mental health with Dr. Vince Callahan. Now, over the weekend, I heard a clip of Kentucky State Senator Karen Berg, who's now being criticized for implying that pedophiles could benefit from something called a child sex doll. Listen to what she said in a committee hearing.
Completely unfamiliar with child sex dolls. So I had, of course, to Google it last night. I was a little scared to put it in my search engine, but I did. And apparently there is research on the subject. Not much, but there are what they call MAPs, minor attracted persons. And the limited amount of research that's done on these dolls, guys, suggests that they actually, for people who are attracted to minors, that these dolls actually decrease their proclivity to go out and attack children, that it actually gives them a release that makes them less likely to go outside of their home. And what was interesting is the research did not support the same conclusions for people who were adult attracted using dolls. That did not diminish their proclivity to engage other people. But for those with the... So I'm just a little concerned that, and like I say, the research is not very good. It is not comprehensive, but the research that is out there is conclusive.
So, again, she's giving this soliloquy here because she's objecting, right, to a bill that Republicans in Kentucky had put forward that would make it illegal to possess, traffic, import or promote the distribution of computer-generated images that depict a minor sexually being abused. And in that comes about the question of what about a child sex doll? So a doll designed for sex that is a child. And of course, this is, people are criticizing her, saying, you know, how dare you cite a MAP, a minor attracted person, as a legitimate reason to have a sex doll for children of a child, for pedophiles. So I believe this is crazy, and that's why I'm bringing it to our mental health expert this evening, Dr. Vince Callahan. Dr. Vince Callahan, I'm sure you're thinking, how did I draw the short straw here? But you got it. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'll use the clinical term, this is sick. That's my clinical observation. First of all, I remember having a test question on my licensing exam way back in the day, and it said to reduce someone's proclivities to child sexual intercourse type things and sexual relations, you would decrease stimuli by doing this and this and this. And it's just a crazy question. And with you, this is not good. This is not something that is even worth spending a penny on research on. This is not something worth looking at. This is really some of the poorest part of our society. And I don't mean economically poor, but I mean mentally poor of our society that's going here. Children are designed to be children. A sexual relationship is the most intimate relationship adults have, and it should be adults have, between themselves. To bring a child into that in any form, manner, shape, or form is something that is not healthy in any way or shape. Children they're not developed yet, number one, which is why pedophilia is so horrible. But computer images, dolls, anything like that, there's an old saying, what you feed grows, what you starve dies. And if you're putting to a MAP person, if you're putting that doll in front of them, hoping that it's going to decrease stimuli and all that kinds of stuff, no, I'm sorry. I don't agree with that at all, in the least.
Now, let me ask a follow-up to that,
Sure.
Because this is not necessarily psychological, but maybe it's more philosophical, I think. But if that thinking would be accurate, then we would say people that are rapists, just regular rapists, I like to rape old ladies, I like to rape whomever I feel like it. Should we get them regular sex dolls, male or female, whatever their choice of rape is, and say, well, let's provide all the people that like to rape people with sex dolls so that they can rape their sex doll, and that's going to help reduce their proclivity for going out there and raping. Is there any school of thought or research, or when you were in psychologist school, did they tell you to do this for people that are rapists?
No, not at all. And we studied this as abnormal psychology. Back when I studied these kinds of things, this was considered abnormal psychology because it's a deprived mindset. It's not something that is in the norm. I think our society has gravitated away from what the norm really should be in society and life for healthy living, and that's another soapbox to get onto. But no, I think at some point we've got to start saying, no, this is really ridiculous, and the answer is no, and it shouldn't be going on.
All right. Well, I think that's a fair statement. And I asked because I really was questioning that from a position of ignorance and just really not knowing. But I think this is a extraordinarily dangerous slippery slope that I think people are playing with for the sake of politics, right? I don't think this woman really believes that she's helping a single person by getting them a child doll for some sex-crazed person to do whatever they want to do with. I think she's trying to not offend a group of people that could decide her political future or make it difficult for her. And that, I think, is the ultimate form of cowardice. And that's where we've kind of landed. That's why I said I don't think it's a psychological thing. It's a philosophical thing. And I think this whole thing is wrong on the basis of philosophy. Now, I have faith in the people of Kentucky that this isn't going to go forward. And after speaking to a pro like you, I'm thinking, it sounds like this is hogwash, what she's talking about. But I do believe that. I believe in the science, and you're telling me the science doesn't say to go out and get a doll, and that's a good thing.
No, it doesn't. And I call myself a conservative. I'm pretty straightforward, and what you see is what you get. And I think in America we need to get back to, hey, if this is wrong, this is wrong. We need to get over the whole political correctness thing and say, well, I don't want to offend somebody. I don't want to do this. Don't want to do that. Okay. Can we stop that and try to get back to some normalcy and some morality and look at things from a sensible common sense? Can't we just common sense go back to that like we used to have before we all got kind of crazy and stupid?
Amen to that. Dr. Vince, stand by. We're going to wrap up with some of your final thoughts straight ahead. Folks, the number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're coming right back with Dr. Vince Callahan.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, familia. We continue with Dr. Vince Callahan. Dr. Vince, let everybody know what you're working on right now, how they could find you, and how they could support the effort.
I am working on a new book called The Drama-Free Home, and that'll be out this spring. I'm also working on a book called The Family Handbook, just some basic things for families. They can reach me at drvincecallahan.com, and we have the book, The Neural Classroom, still on that website. They can get that book and support what we're doing. And just want to say to you, thank you so much for letting me be on your show. And I'll leave it with one last statement. You can't milk a bull.
That's a good one. I'm probably going to use that.
Wrong.
That's
Some
right.
things are just wrong.
Amen to that. Dr. Vince Callahan, I thank you for being here and sharing your words of wisdom with this audience. I know they appreciate it. I do get a lot of feedback, even like personal friends of mine that are listeners to the show. They'll like text me and tell me, I love that guy. Because, we talk about, I think it's the break from the news and politics and the in-depth, I guess, neuropsychological approach that you take, which people are very interested in. I think we're at I don't want to say a coming of age, but I think we're at a point in our history, or at least lately, where people are really interested in what goes on emotionally and mentally in their lives. And I thank you for doing it. And one of these days, I'm going to end up on your leather couch with my feet up and talking to you for an hour. Dr. Vince, thank you for being here. Folks, make sure you follow him and check him out. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, sir.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're coming right back. Open Phone America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program, hour number 3, Monday night. If you want to give us a call, 833-482-5337. Join our late night national town hall conversation. We've had some interesting discussion tonight. We've talked about how to deal with family members and others when we're discussing politics and the cultural happenings in our world. And one of the things that I took from my conversation earlier with Brent Hamachek, who wrote the book Dissidently Speaking, was to change things from it is making a declarative statement to questioning the statement, asking, is it? And shifting those two words can make a really big impact. And I really liked it because that I also have to soften my approach, right? There's a lot of people I deal with. I have 2 daughters. I have other women in my life that, women are delicate and need to be dealt with, not the way you deal with everybody else. You have to be a little kinder, gentler, sweeter. And that's not always my forte. I try to be a gentleman. I try to be empathetic, but, I can do better at it. Trust me. I'm very rough around the edges in my personal life. This is the most polished version of me is the one that goes on the air. The one that's behind the wheel or doing anything else. When my kids come to me with something, I'm like, what? What do you, I just start yelling right away. It's just passion yelling, right? I'm a passionate person. I'm not yelling at them. I just yell. I yell a lot. I speak loudly. So anyway, my thought that I wanted to share was I think we could learn a lot from that. And also the idea that we got to shift our thinking a little bit so that we're not attacking these people. Because ultimately, that's why everybody's talking about civil war. It's going to be a civil war. Of course there's going to be a civil war. If all we do is hate the other side. Now, I have some critics online that say, oh, there goes Valdez again, talking about transsexuals, talking about... I'm not beating up the transsexuals. I'm beating up when they go after children to try to teach them this lifestyle, right? I don't think we should teach children anything that has to do with sexuality. That's my position on this. We've had transsexuals call into this show, and I think I welcome them. I think I've been very respectful. Why? Because they're people, and they're our neighbors, and we, Bible says, love your neighbor. So look, maybe not my cup of tea. I'm pretty sure they look at me and they say, you know what? Not my cup of tea. I get it. We don't all agree with each other. But we don't have to ostracize each other. And I think that's the important part. Now, you don't have to be best friends with everybody, but I think there's a degree of respect and tolerance and understanding, right? And old saying in the church, you hate the sin, not the sinner. Now, of course, if certain people, you say that, and they're like, what do you mean I'm sinning? They don't agree with our position if you're, a person of faith. That's okay, too. That's another argument that we'll have. But my point is, you hate the sin, you don't hate the sinner. And that's how we got to get along. And same thing with politics. You're never going to win anybody over by telling them that they're crazy for supporting this, supporting that, supporting the other, or that they're killing people because they decided to protect themselves by getting a vaccine. Look, I didn't get any vaccine. I didn't want the vaccine. I told my kids not to get the vaccine. But I will say this. I'm not going to sit here and ridicule you and tell you you've got 6 months to live if you told me you got the vaccine. I would just say, man, okay, well, that was your choice, right? I believe in liberty. And that's ultimately what I think all of this comes down to. So we have to be, respectful within the confines of our liberty so that we can have a country, so that I can go and buy stuff at the gluten-free bakery without the woman getting upset with me and telling me that I'm the problem and that my love of money is the problem and, the focus on the bottom line and, accepting Trump despite his transgressions and all of these other things that I think are just uncalled for. Right, I said we focus on the facts, we focus on the things that matter, and I love the idea of changing the discourse from something where we're accusing someone to, let's have this discussion, like I do with so many of our callers that come. Now listen, every now and again, I may get a little loud. Every now and again, there's certain people you can't reason with, but you at least try. You make the effort. Anyway, we talked about that. We also talked about this Kentucky Democrat senator, state senator, who was criticized over the weekend for implying that pedophiles could benefit from buying child sex dolls. Yes, a sex doll that looks like a child, a prepubescent sex doll that they could use to practice their pedophilia with because they are minor attracted persons. And this, to me, is outrageous because it only makes room for people that are very sick, like the dad, right? Not who's dad? I don't know who's dad, but a dad in, let's see, where was this? In Oregon. This dad in Oregon, some say Oregon, drugged a 12-year-old girl, actually several 12-year-old girls, at a sleepover with smoothies that were laced with drugs. And then he creeped over them. That's according to police. Listen to this. This Oregon dad, he drugged his daughter's young friends with smoothies laced with sedatives. Then he creeped over them as they drifted off to sleep. So this guy likes 12-year-old girls. What a sick bastard. One of the three 12-year-old girls texted her mom with a desperate plea for help at 1:45 a.m. as she lost consciousness and begged to be rescued at the home in Lake Oswego in Oregon, just south of Portland, saying, "Mom, please pick me up and say I had a family emergency. I don't feel safe." What a smart little girl. Good for her. "I might not respond, but come get me." Crying emoji. "Please pick me up. Please!" Exclamation point, all caps, "please," she wrote, according to the police. Imagine getting a text from your 12-year-old girl. You know what? I would never get it. Why? My kids never did sleepovers. For this very reason. I've always been a paranoid person. Most Hispanics are, by the way. Most people I meet, they'll tell me, "Your parents let you do sleepovers?" Nope. Yeah, me neither. It was never a thing. We were the ones that never got to go to sleepover. Anyway, Michael Maiden, 57 years old, turned himself into the county jail on Wednesday after a grand jury issued an indictment accusing him of multiple felonies and misdemeanors stemming from this August 26, 2023 sleepover, according to the police. They did not speculate on the motive. Now, they do say Maiden laced mango smoothies with benzodiazepine, a depressant that slows the nervous system, and served the drinks to his daughter's friends, according to a probable cause affidavit obtained by OregonLive.com. Now, during the sleepover, the girls watched movies and did facials before Maiden prepared the smoothies and insisted they drink them. And this is what the girls told the police. The drinks had tiny white chunks throughout and sprinkled on top, according to the affidavit. Maiden continued to demand the girls down the drinks, even when one said she didn't like hers, according to the documents. Maiden made them take repeated trips down into the basement where the girls were sleeping, at one point holding his finger under a girl's nose to see if she was asleep. He also moved one girl's arm and moved her body on the bed. The girl remained awake in fear that Mr. Maiden was going to do something to her friend. Imagine the torture of being a 12-year-old girl and seeing this man coming after you and your friends, and you feeling, here's what they described it as. Another girl recalled feeling woozy, hot, and clumsy after drinking the smoothie and subsequently blacked out, falling into a thick, deep sleep. She said she'd never experienced such a deep sleep before, according to the affidavit. Now, again, I support this guy's right to innocence until he's proven guilty. I do. Maybe all 12 of these girls are being coached by evil parents that are trying to defame this man. That's a possibility. But at this point, it seems remote, just based on what I'm reading. Mr. Maiden returned and stood near where the girls were sleeping for what seemed like an extended period of time and seemed to be checking if the girls were asleep. That's what the girls reported to the police. After one girl was rescued from the sleepover, her parents called the families of the other girls to take them home, too. I wouldn't have left. I would have said, "Oh, my God, what's going on? Let's go." No. I'm taking them all. Anyway, when the parents arrived around 3 a.m., Maiden resisted letting the girls go home, according to the authorities. Cops were called to the Randall Children's Hospital emergency room, where the girls tested positive for having ingested an unknown prescription drug. The girls were interviewed by police around noon, and the following day, about 12 hours after they had been drugged. Police observed that they walked slowly and used the assistance of their mother for balance. Their eyelids were heavy, and the one girl was speaking slowly. Court records show that Mr. Maiden and his wife divorced late last year, but had owned a home in Lake Oswego at the time of the sleepover. I wonder why they got divorced. What does the mother know? Hopefully nothing. Hopefully she knows nothing, and that's why she let her kid go with this monster. Maiden's attorney, Mark Cogan, said she had not seen any evidence in the case. Mr. Maiden is presumed innocent until proven guilty, and we hope that people will reserve judgment until all of the facts and circumstances are known, is what she said. Maiden faces charges including causing another person to ingest a controlled substance and application of a controlled substance to the body of another person. He pleaded not guilty during his arraignment Wednesday in Clackamas County, and his bail was set at $50,000. So what's he going to say? Oh, I was actually cutting up the mangoes while I was taking my anti-anxiety medicine or whatever they use that benzodiazepine stuff for, and voila, I chopped one up and it ended up in all the girls' smoothies. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. And did he drug his own kid so she'd be asleep too? How much of this is going on? Who knows what? How long have they known it? That's what I want to know. I'm going to go to your calls on this. Let's see. Jane, Saratoga, New York, WGDJ. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. First of all, these people are sick through and through. As far as sex dolls, pedophiles want the reactions. They want to see how your body reacts to what they're doing. They're not going to be happy with a sex doll. And I want people to keep in mind that children are the greatest gift from God that we could ever have.
Amen.
And parents need to. I'm with you. I never allowed my daughter to go to a sleepover. We had 1 million at our house, but we always had at least 6 or 8 kids. And no, these people are just sick to the bone, and I don't like to be that mean. That's why in Miami, Florida, the Sisters of Mercy at one of the hospitals, it was a nun-run hospital, they started, people like that, they started giving them electric shock therapy, which basically made them a zombie for the rest of their lives. And I think that's a pretty good answer. But
yeah, it sounds appropriate. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate it. Folks, we come back to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. I want to continue with your calls and more. And I want to go to, first I want to cancel the All Points Bulletin. We had an APB out on our buddy Gil from Manila in the Philippines. And Gil is a longtime listener and caller to this program for the last 40 some odd years. And he had gone missing, right? We didn't know where Gil was. And I was asking all of my contacts and sources, all of my people that are out in the Philippines, everywhere. I was saying, anybody seen Gil? Where in the world is Gil? Well, Gil has surfaced. Gil in Manila, Philippines. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yes, Rich. I just wanted to compliment you on the wonderful interview you did with Dr. Phil.
Thank you.
You know, that was great. And he's so spot on about the basic causes of the problems in U.S. society. You know, in this country, I've never met a Filipino who was an atheist. About 86% are Catholic, about 8% are Muslim, and the rest are other Christian denominations. They have the, I think, the 4th largest population of Latter-day Saints here after the U.S., Brazil, Mexico. Number 4 is the Philippines. Also, other what we would consider mainstream religions in the United States, and it's a country where just about everybody attends church, and family values are very, very strong. You know, economically, you know, we don't compete with too many places, but I think culturally we do. And what Dr. Phil is recommending and blaming on COVID, you know, kids have lost basically 2 years of their education because of the COVID lockdowns. We had it here, and many students did lose out, but our daughter, fortunately, she has 2 aunts who are school teachers and made sure that she kept up with all of her work, and she's doing very well in school. I'm very happy, very proud guy. So, but just wanted to compliment you again. Dr. Phil is so right about just about everything, and maybe after Donald Trump, we can make him president. What do you think?
You know what? So far, he makes a lot more sense than Joe Biden, and I like the way it sounds. I'd even, let's see, Trump Dr. Phil ticket. That doesn't sound too bad to me either. He's out of Texas. Trump's out of Florida. I think it sounds like a winning combo. Now, Gil, you sound very strong. You sound like you're in good spirits and in good health. I hope to have a good report. Are you doing well?
Yeah, well, I'm a lot better. I didn't realize how sick I was until a couple of days ago. My wife had taken videos of me the first 2 weeks I was in the hospital, and I was a very sick puppy. And they had to give me massive doses of steroids to control my blood sugar. And unfortunately, it's taken most of my hearing, but the alternative is better than what would have happened otherwise. So we're okay. I've got a wonderful wife, a wonderful daughter, and we'll be headed to the States here. We've had to postpone our trip because of my health issues, but I hope to be there by September or October.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping you'll be in the city one day and we could meet up, take a few pictures, and share it with the rest of the audience. I'd love that.
Yeah, I'll be in Queens. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you, Gil. Godspeed to you, my friend. I appreciate it. And folks, we're going to get to the rest of your calls right now. Don't go anywhere. We got calls from Montana, from Pennsylvania, Michigan, not Phoenix, but Kansas City. I don't know which Kansas City, but the one that's listening in Phoenix. And we've got Maryland also lined up to give some commentary. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're getting to you right now. 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. California, where you at? New York City, where you at? Let's go.
Glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
In the coming days, we're going to join with our friends in Jordan and others in providing airdrops of additional food and supplies into Ukraine, and seek to continue to open up other avenues into Ukraine, including the possibility of a Marine corridor to deliver large amounts of humanitarian assistance. In addition to expanding deliveries by land, as I said, we're going to insist that Israel facilitate more trucks and more routes to get more and more people the help they need.
Hold on a second. So that sounds like Joe El Baboso Biden is saying that there's going to be humanitarian airdrops in Ukraine facilitated by Israel and Jordan. Well, hold up. Wait a minute. Of course, he's talking about Gaza. That's right. He's talking about what's going on in Gaza, not what's going on in Ukraine. But he can't tell the two apart because he's Joe El Baboso Biden. And I mean, again, I want to make fun of him and laugh, but it's really sad at the same time. Let me get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Ken, Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Ken, go right ahead. What are your thoughts?
Good evening, my patriot brother. Rich, you have too many damn good subjects, so it makes me want to bounce around and go to this one to that one to this one. But I want to talk. I want to talk about that congressman or that politician from Kentucky that thinks it's all right to give a pedophile, a person who we know is mentally sick to begin with, you're going to give them a doll that represents a little child and think they're going to be happy with that. Just like that woman caller, I'm not sure, I don't remember where she was from. She's exactly right. That doll won't satisfy them. They want to see reactions and hear things from what the victim is doing. That's why they're so sick as they are. Now, this guy, Rich, this guy had nothing but evil intentions with all them young girls. He wasn't drugging them so he could take a video of them laying there sleeping. We all know that.
That's the truth.
How far his sexual sickness was going to go, we'll never know, thank God. And thank God that one girl was trained by her parents to where if you ever sleeping over and you don't feel comfortable, you call me. And I don't give a damn what time of night it is. You call me, you know?
Yep.
And when you were first saying the story, I thought, well, how come that first? I'm thinking to myself, why in the hell did that first mom not take her kid to the hospital? And then you come out and said that they did. And they all tested positive for that drug, right?
Yep. Yeah, that is such a scary story. During the break, I was telling Alex in the control room that this is literally like the nightmare scenario that I told my kids about when they were little kids. And I would tell them, nope. And why can't I go on a sleepover? And I'd say, no. First of all, your mother said never. And I agree with your mother in saying never. Because you never know. They might have a sick uncle. The dad might be a closet sicko. They might have a crazy aunt somewhere. You never know. When you hear about these stories, when they make the news, it's never a stranger that does this in the home, right? It's always the neighbor. It's always an uncle. It's always somebody very close and very trusted. This is why you can't trust people that are even close to you, because these things can happen. People are sick and they know how to mask it, especially something like this. Nobody advertises that because they know nobody would cover for them. It's really, really sick. It really is sick, Ken. I think you're spot on here. Now, tell me, I know you had some thoughts on the Houthis. What's up with that?
Well, Rich, they've been shooting missiles and ballistic stuff at people now for 2-3 months, right? And they actually sunk, I believe, a British flag ship a week or so ago. And then the big Biden tough guys come out and say how them and the British dropped a couple airstrikes on them. You tell me why there's still even a piece of that land that looks like it could do anything to hold a weapon. We've got military satellites that can spot a pack of cigarettes on the ground. So why is there still any form of military ability to be able to do that to ships coming through that area? That should all be like sand.
I'm with you. Let me tell you, I know the answer. Joe Biden. And this one I really blame on Biden. This is not Obama's pulling the strings. And no. Obama was happy to send strikes. Biden doesn't like conflict. He's a pacifist. And honestly, so is Trump. Trump is, and I'm not criticizing either of them. I'm making an observation. The difference between Biden and Trump is that Trump is like, look, I don't want war. Let's build a building. Let's make a deal. But the minute he knows that you're doing the wrong thing, he's not asking anymore. And he's going to say, all right, listen, I'm going to take out your top general, and then we'll talk again. Right? He wasn't afraid to use the power he had. He used it very sparingly because he's not a war hawk. And I love that. I think it was great that he spent $750 billion on rebuilding the military while he was in office. And the hope was we didn't need it. It ended up that Joe Biden was going to use that to give away to, his friends, the Taliban. But the point was Trump understood how to balance this, appeasing the military-industrial complex while still remaining true to his pacifistic nature. And it's literally, it's Reagan, right? Peace through strength. Goldwater, peace through strength. So I think that's the problem that we have here, that Biden is afraid to rock the boat. He just doesn't want the conflict. And he's like, no, just let us shoot their rockets. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Make sure none of our guys get killed. God bless our troops, right? I got hairy legs. And he's just going to say something stupid. And he really believes that if they got away with it once, they're not going to do it again. Send them a stern message. Let's blow up their warehouse, burn everything down. That doesn't work. I think you know that and I know that. People that hate us, that can't wait to see our destruction, they're not gonna respond to an empty threat or the blowing up of some empty building, right? They only respond to real force. and it's got to be real force. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, Ken.
It has to be force, Rich. That's what they only deal with, that kind of mentality, force versus force. And if you got more force than me, well, I guess it's your day. But, I just hope as a country, Rich, I pray to God as a country that we can hold on till we get Donald Trump back in office, because we got such a weak person doing the job that's supposed to be the most important job in the world. He don't even know where he's at half the time. Like you said just before, or just a few minutes ago, he called Ukraine. He called the Gaza Strip Ukraine. He doesn't have the guy is mentally out there. He doesn't have a clue half the time.
I think you're right. And listen, we all make mistakes. I've said misstatements on the radio. Trump says them. Everybody says them. The problem is it's the norm for Biden, not the exception. Ken in Lansing, Michigan, thank you for your call. Big shout out to everybody on WILS. Let's quickly go to Dan, Washington, Pennsylvania, listening on the great KDKA. Go right ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Rich. I didn't realize how a couple things I was going to say here were going to tie in with all this. But I remember when I was it'd have to be second grade, because in first grade we would have had to learn to read. And then in second grade we got this book. It was called Think and Do, not do and think. It just doesn't flow. Yeah. Right. So we this is second grade now. I think Joe's capable of that. I don't know, but I'm not a professional practicing psychologist anymore. But I would say that I think he had a contemplation. He's often been accused of plagiarizing, and he's walking on the bridge with Dr. King, and except
Biden comes up with some tall tales.
Joe was going, so he might have been on the bridge going the opposite direction. But the statement that I think he may have been trying to come up with was, my fellow Americans, people, citizens, if you were to ask your country to do for you, you would soon be a communist too.
That's funny, and yeah, it's kind of spot on. You're right. Trying to kind of paraphrase Kennedy, but really telling the truth in a statement like that, right? And Biden is so gaffe prone that these statements that he makes, they're just. They are laughable, but they're sad. And that seems to be the trend with Joe Biden, is that he's laughable and sad at the same time. Dan, thanks for your insight on that one. Big shout out to everybody listening on KDKA, America's oldest radio station. And folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The president does not need new laws. The president needs a backbone to make sure that he enforces the immigration laws that are already on the books.
Couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. And as a matter of fact, former President Trump tried to close the border, and it was enjoined in the courts and never saw the light of day. This coming from an individual who is purposefully refusing to coordinate, communicate, collaborate with other officials and trying to wreak havoc in other cities and states across the country. That is not a model of governance, and he couldn't be more wrong.
Number one, Governor Abbott is protecting the people, the citizens of his state. He's actually doing his job to protect them, unlike Alejandro Mayorkas, who in Spanish we would call him un maleante, right? Alejandro the Maleante Mayorkas, right? Which is a thug, a gangster from the street. That's who this guy is. He really is. He pretends to be polished, but he's nothing more than a street thug. And he says that he's not willing to engage or communicate. How about you, Secretary Mayorkas? Have you not been invited on this program? Have you responded? Have you showed up? Have you agreed to withstand the scrutiny of people in America? I'd love to have you on and let the callers ask you some questions. I know what I would ask. I would say, what does it feel like to go to sleep every day knowing that your reckless policies open the door for some Venezuelan rapist thug, murderous thug, to come and shoot at a toddler, or for another one from El Salvador to rape a teenage girl, or for another one from Venezuela to murder a 22-year-old college student? How many children, little girls, need to die in order for Alejandro Mayorkas and Joe Biden to understand that this is a crisis? Of course they know. The problem is that they're complicit with the human smuggling operation that's going on at the border. Punto y final. Period. The end. And this is a problem. Now, we had a caller on the line, one of the Franks, I think from Cumberland, Maryland. He had a question about why the gentleman from and he's nothing gentle about him, the accused killer of Laken Riley, why he hasn't had a sentencing hearing or an arraignment. I don't know what the question was, but he seems to have dropped off the line, so we won't be able to get to that. But the bottom line here, from my opinion, is these guys are complicit. These guys are the government tools of the cartel henchmen, and it has to stop. By hook or by crook, somebody's got to do the right thing, right? Somebody who has presidential aspirations. If Kamala Harris had a backbone, if she loved this country, she would look Joe Biden in the eye during the next cabinet meeting and say, "Sir, I've already spoken with a handful of my colleagues on the cabinet, and we're invoking the 25th Amendment, because not only can you not win the next election, but you are a danger to this country. You're a danger to little girls on college campuses, 22-year-old young women, little girls like 14 years old that have gotten raped, little children, toddlers that have been shot. It's an absolute disgrace what's going on at the border. And it doesn't stop there. It's an absolute disgrace what's going on with the craziness with gender ideology and how it's been embraced and promoted. It's an absolute travesty of justice to see what's happening in our federal government with the military and how the military is just on its head. It's become a bastion of wokeness instead of being, the greatest fighting force on this planet. We're in a very, very bad predicament. Very, very bad predicament. Let us go to Jim, Kansas City, Missouri, listening on KFNX out of Phoenix, Arizona. Jim, go right ahead.
Rich, you got some splaining to do. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
This is a little bit off the topic, but in our society, we get paid extra for various and sundry things. And one of the things that you can get paid a lot extra for is having a security clearance. And I would say that anybody who has a security clearance is even remotely associated with these failed inspections on these passenger airplanes where people could get sucked out the door. They should lose their security. They should lose their security clearance because they insulate themselves from the people who actually do the inspections. And then they say, well, whoever's remotely associated with those inspections that were failed should lose their security clearance.
I'm with you. I think that's a good point. Earlier I was talking about airlines in the first hour and how, the merger between JetBlue and Spirit Airlines was today was canceled, and they're not doing it anymore. And I thought, good news. That's good news, because if it meant that Spirit was going to become more like JetBlue, then amen, hallelujah. But if it meant that JetBlue was going to become more like Spirit, then I'm happy to hear that they're not making the merger, because they're worlds apart, right? I mean, for the same price, airline, both of them kind of budget options. One comes with a TV, free movie, lots of options, free snack, a free drink, very nice people. And the other one comes with, mediocre nice people, if I'm being honest, right? Because they're like very smiley on Spirit, but the minute that you don't respond as quickly as they want you to, they are very gangsta, very, they're ready to rock and roll. So, I think it's an interesting point. But when we come back, I'm going to get your thoughts on immigration as well as the sex dolls for children. Can men breastfeed? Oh, that's a good one. And anything else with these multiple wars that America's involved in, which all, in my opinion, have to come to an end. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Quickly, I just want to share that a woman fatally stabbed a convicted rapist during an attempt for him to sexually assault again at a laundromat. That's according to the sheriff's office in Tammany Parish, Louisiana, who is reporting this on breaking911.com. And a 40-year-old man, Nicholas Tranchant, was transported to the hospital where he died. But at approximately 3:30 yesterday afternoon, the cops were called to the scene here. This convicted sex offender was fatally stabbed at a laundromat after he tried to assault a female at the establishment, and she shanked him. Now, my question to you all is it wrong to applaud this? Well, if it is, I'm sorry. It's about time people step up to these people. Nobody should live in fear of monsters like this pendejo. Anyway, just wanted to bring that to your attention. Let us go to Frank in Evergreen, Montana. Go right ahead, Frank.
Hi, Rich. I'll keep it short. But it was about 50 years ago here in Montana. I recall there was I think it was MSU and Bozeman were doing some studies on marijuana leading to milk and large breasts in males. And so it was, maybe you can't milk a bull, but maybe you can a cowboy.
You know what? I was reading something about that, Frank. And apparently if you have elevated levels of prolactin, that can lead to lactation in men. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. But if you're taking any type of estrogen, hormones, or anything like that, or have an imbalance, it could definitely become the case. It's literally men transitioning. Go figure. So maybe we shouldn't be drinking that stuff. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I am Rich Valdez. Thank you.